Last time on Zero to Hero, our boy Syl survived the end of Dragons. Moving on to Path of Fire to get mounts required for fast map completion, will he have what it takes to power through? Find out that and much more on this episode of Zero to Hero. So this week is kind of like last week where I had an extremely limited playtime, only about 5 hours total. With that, I was able to accomplish quite a bit. First things first, I always do the weekly Wizards Vault stuff, which I started pretty late into the quarterly cycle, and I was still able to get everything I could ever need out of the Wizards Vault. Because of the limited playtime, I actually did blow some of my Astral Acclaim on the Mastery coffers. Mainly, I was looking for the End of Dragons experience, so I can finally finish the Globalization Mastery. I know the last couple of weeks I keep bringing it up, but it is important. And I did, so I got my first ever set of antique summoning stones right before the weekly reset, so that's cool. Additionally, I did set up an alt park at the Kining City jumping puzzle. That's going to be critical source of both Jade Root stones and ancient coins. I will have to try to do strike missions, at least the daily ones, to make sure I stay topped up on the currencies. And as for the 100 Imperial Favor, I will be converting the notes that you get from the event rewards, and I'll primarily be getting those from repeatable hero points. We'll see how long that can be maintained. If not, I'll try to snag a Suitong Province meta event now and then, just to make sure that I can still get those antique summoning stones each week. The only meta that I haven't done in EOD so far is Dragon's End, just because of the amount of time it takes. With the Wizards Vault resetting soon, I'll be finishing up my Power DPS and Boon DPS Chronomancer gear, and I also did a full hero point run across End of Dragons to finish unlocking Virtuoso. These are some of the last bits and pieces before I can effectively move on to Path of Fire. And like always, I did my weekly Wing 1, which was interesting because I pugged into an NA pseudo guild run, which was SP or Sunken Place. They're pretty high skill level players, and you can definitely tell by the strategies that they were using that they were high skill players. I'm not sure if they knew who I was or not, but the banter was pretty entertaining, I must say. They run high-end fractals and raids, and I'm always happy to see them whenever I do run into them in the wild. Regardless, for Envoy, I still need 2 weeks worth of Wing 1 clears, and I also need to get the Twisted Castle Aurelium Mirror completed and a Keep Construct kill with the special Venom. I'll likely be setting those up when I need to. My only hesitation is that I don't have a healer set, and I feel like a scumbag commander if I just LFG all the critical rolls. I might end up doing it, but if you see a straight scumbag looking for group post about a tower chrono, a healer, a boon DPS, and I'm just sitting there doing like 18k as a DPS player, you know it's just something that has to happen. I still don't have leyline gliding, so I can't do tower chrono even if I did have the gear for it. However, the last gear that I will need to fully gear some of these builds will be the trinkets, so amulets, rings, accessories, and back piece, which is why I'm trying to blast through the Path of Fire so we can jump into the Living World seasons where all of that stuff. I did unlock Bitterfrost Frontier for the Sky Scale collection earlier, but I haven't been farming Winterberries, so I feel like I'm going to need to do a whole lot of trinket grind here pretty soon and showcase how I go about getting that stuff, but I will wait until I'm done with POF and getting my mounts. Which leads us to what we did for the bulk of our playtime this week, which wasn't just the general grind. We started Path of Fire. Now, Path of Fire was an expansion that never really resonated with me. I'm in reality not a big story player. I don't dislike the story, I just don't think the writing is really bad or good. Even though in recent years it hasn't been the best, I feel like gameplay features of the expansion is what largely makes them good or bad. Like if Soto did not introduce Weapon Master, it would have introduced basically nothing. But Path of Fire, on the other hand, and the Living World following it, which I'm going to include in this era just because of the way ArenaNet ties the expansions with post-expansion updates. This era introduced some of the best game-changing elite specializations. It introduced mounts, which literally defines the way maps are designed now. It introduced bounties, and even though they are kind of janky, they are just a better version of rifts, essentially. It introduced 3 raid wings, which 2 of the 3 are considered the hardest in the game, alongside a ton of side stories and achievements. This is part of the reason why the game felt so fresh and good and exciting, and why the veteran community like myself, Daddy Muckluck, and other creators felt that POF and Living World Season 4 were the best. Unfortunately, it's hard to recapture that in a playthrough or in a Zero to Hero setting. I will eventually be working through all of the raids, but Wing 5 and 6 on NA are not really run that frequently. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty clueless when it comes to Kadim 1. I think I've only ever killed him like 4 or 5 times. So as progress through the story goes, I made it through Glint's lair into the mist, which is still in the beginning of it. And I think the story beats are pretty good, but in all honesty, the reason why I'm even working through POF after getting the Sky Scale is for the Skimmer and the Griffin, which I will be getting as soon as it becomes available. And as I said in the last video, the Wizard's Vault refresh will be funding the 250 gold that I need for the Griffin. And then the last mount that I'll need is the Roller Beetle, which after I get that, I will basically be speed running Corteria and getting into World vs. World, which hopefully I'll be doing that part of this quest in the next couple of weeks. Once that's done, I should have all of the hard gated items to complete 2 Corteria legendary weapons, and then I'll be really in business for getting into the actual in-game repeatable content by setting up our heal chrono, setting up our Condi Virtuoso, and being able to grind through fractals and raids with ease. After I get Leyland gliding, of course. Before I go off on last week's questions, I'll pose some new ones for this week. The first question is, what is your favorite armor set? They keep adding new armor skins in, and I'm curious to see what you guys are vibing with, if it's the newer skins or if you're a fan of the older stuff. I will be doing some wardrobe stuff here pretty soon on this character, and so I'm curious to see what looks you guys actually find the best. The second question is, what do you guys think of cosmetic infusions? I know that there are some interesting infusions. Personally, my favorite ones are the more subtle ones like the Imperial Everbloom or the Chalk one or things like that, the Queen Bee. ArenaNet has released some really flashy ones like the one in the Wizard's Vault, but I feel like the ones that cover up the skin aren't necessarily as popular as some of the ones that just affect the armor. I have some thoughts on this, but you'll have to wait until next week. As far as last week's questions and some comments, first thing about story beats, there are a few comments about the Sylvari stuff, and to be honest, pretty Heart of Thorns, most people were pretty enchanted with the Sylvari, myself included. My main is a Salad, and for the long time after launch, almost every new character that I made was a Salad. So I'm pretty in tune with the Sylvari love. However, there is a character named Malik who basically had no connection to the Pale Tree, which is basically the Sylvari mommy, which I guess makes Mordremoth's daddy. I'm not really sure what the implications are there, to be honest. Maybe the Pale Tree is like the voice of Mordremoth or something. But basically this guy had no connection. He was born outside of the Pale Tree. And then that plot thread was subsequently abandoned entirely. And I think it would be interesting to revisit that smaller thread. And I feel like Guild Wars shines with the smaller scale stuff, which a lot of you also resonated with. Once you get into Dragon universe level threats, the whole plot kind of breaks down. My favorite storylines, as I've said in other videos, were the raid ones, like 1 through 3, you are basically a group of envoy going to rescue a squad that got lost in the jungle. They don't really know what happened. You start to uncover this larger scene, but even in the larger scene of the raid, it's literally just like, oh, the White Mantle are trying to bring back Lazarus. And then in Wing 4, you do a little throwback with Saul D'Alessio and some more White Mantle stuff to put a pin in that storyline. In Wing 5, you have a little side story following up on the Underworld from Guild Wars 1, which is awesome. You get to fight Doom again. And Wings 6 and 7 are the side story about the Djinn and the Mystic Forge, and that has some really fun sequences in it. Which leads me to the story that I would love to see expanded on. And that is what is happening with Desmina. Like, the entire Wing 5 story is suspect. Basically, you go in, you seal Doom with the Reapers, which is like what you do in Guild Wars 1 through the various Underworld quest lines. But then you get some super sus discussion about how Desmina will just like take care of it all. Like, she's in charge of the Underworld now. And I would love to see Desmina slowly like be corrupted or just mad with power now that she's taken over the Underworld or something like that. It doesn't need to be a raid boss or a raid wing, even though it would be great to see an X-Pack dedicated to an area like the Underworld or the God Realms, which some of you guys talked about that. I think that especially playing through Path of Fire, you end up in the Mists and you talk to the gods, or you go to the Mists to talk to the gods. I think that expanding on some of that would be a great way to incorporate new storylines in with some of that sweet nostalgia from Guild Wars 1. Before I move on to the second question about expansion features, I wanted to highlight God Usopp. He talked about Queen Jenna's conspiracy a little bit, and I don't really know about the conspiracy against the Queen outside of some fanfic Reddit theories about how Queen Jenna doesn't really exist and how she's kind of like a clone created by Countess Anise or something like that. I'm not really sure of the Jenna conspiracy conspiracy. So if any of you guys know what's up of the conspiracy against the queen, hit me in the comments because I'd love to see it. I went and read through the wiki page on it and I can't really find a whole lot. So fill me in. I want to know. Moving on to the second question about expansion features. I think that the next expansion feature we are going to get is weapons again. Honestly, I think they're just going to have to keep dropping weapons until they can't anymore. However, I feel like the only thing that they actually have to do to make an expansion interesting is by adding like 1 or 2 utility skills per character. They could be locked behind the new expansion just like Weapon Master is, but it would give a good way for them to fill in some gaps in builds. The only drawback would be for the Revenant because they would have to give them a new legend instead, but even with that, there is still some design space for a new legend. Ultimately, having an expansion that is a feature pack expansion wouldn't be too horrible either, and just saying screw the storyline and putting in a new game mode similar to like Alliance battles or something would be absolutely great. It's just you would have to do something like that, and ArenaNet would have to be committed to maintaining it. If they incorporated it into SPVP and they did a full systems rework of SPVP, allowing people to get gizmos or something out of longer reward tracks or achievement lines, that would be an interesting approach as well. Before I wrap up this video, I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to still enter the giveaway. You will need to visit episode 7 to enter. I will be pulling all of the entries from the comments section of that video. If you want to know what I'm giving away, just watch the video and it'll explain it. I appreciate all of the comments of support and everyone who sent me a mail in-game or sends me a whisper. I always enjoy talking to you guys, and if you ever need anything, don't be shy to ask. There will be some longer playtime videos with more to talk about and more to unlock coming up real soon as my schedule opens up. So hopefully we will get some of these builds completed and I can finally get off of Power Chrono for everything. Like always, I want to thank you for watching, and a special thanks to all of my subscribers up to this point. And if you dig the content, please consider subscribing. I have a banger of a non-zero to hero video in the works, so keep your eyes on the channel and I promise you're going to enjoy it. Thanks again, and I will catch you on episode 9. Peace.